Hello students, welcome back to my channel. My name is Ritesh Button, and in this video I am going to share with you a detailed summary of chapter 2, Lost Spring, from your textbook in English class 12th, Flamingo. In the story Lost Spring, the writer Anis Jung describes the miserable conditions of the poor children who live in slums and work very hard in very difficult and dirty conditions. Since their parents are very poor and they cannot afford the school fees of their children, and therefore these slum children are unable to go to schools. First of all, the writer describes about a boy called Sahib from a family of the rag pickers, people who have migrated from Bangladesh and have settled in Simapuri, the periphery of Delhi, the outskirts of Delhi. The writer shares the second story of another boy who is Mukesh from Firozabad, who is from another very poor family, the people who have been living for generations in the town of Firozabad, making bangles. In both the stories we find one common thing: the lost spring, the time when the little children should develop physically, mentally, emotionally. They should be sent to school so that they can live a self-reliant life. But unfortunately, these very poor children who belong to the very poor families are deprived of the privileges of life. Their childhood is stolen. They have lost their spring season. Sahib from a family of rag pickers, Mukesh from a family of bangle makers. Students, before we enter into the detailed summary of this chapter, let's first of all have a look of the writer Anis Jung. One more very important thing, dear students: if you haven't yet subscribed to my channel, please subscribe, and also please press the bell icon so that you don't miss any latest videos from this channel. The links to all my videos are given in the description box below. Please spare some time to go through that also. Anis Jung, the writer of the story Lost Spring, was born in Rourkela and spent her childhood and adolescence in Hyderabad. She received her education in Hyderabad and in the United States of America. Her father and mother both were writers. She started her career as a writer in India. Anis Jung has been an editor and columnist for major newspapers in India and abroad, and has authored several books. This lesson is actually an excerpt from the book titled Lost Spring: Stories of Stolen Childhood, in which she analyzes the grinding poverty and traditions which condemn these poor children to a life of exploitation. And now let us enter into the first part of the story, in which our hero is Sahib-e-Alam. The first part of the story starts with the line, "Sometimes I find a rupee in the garbage." These words are said by Sahib, full name Sahib-e-Alam. Excitedly, he said these words to the writer when he was describing his work to her. The writer Anis Jung sees a boy Sahib every morning in her neighborhood. She would find him scrounging for gold in the garbage dumps. Actually, the valuable things found in the garbage are like gold for the people like Sahib-e-Alam. The meaning of the word scrounging is hunting about. Means Sahib would search for the things in the garbage in much excitement, thinking that he would find some rupees or some other valuable things in the heap of garbage. The family of Sahib left their home in Dhaka years ago. His home was set amidst the green fields of Dhaka, but now his home is not even a distant memory. His mother told him that there were many storms that swept away their fields and homes, and therefore they left their homeland and came to Simapuri, looking for gold in a big city, that is Delhi. One day the writer asked Sahib, "Why do you do this?" Then in reply to this, Sahib said, "I have nothing else to do." And then the writer gave an advice to him, saying, "Go to school." But Sahib wisely replied, "There is no school in my neighborhood. When they build one, I will go." The writer gave him an offer. "If I start a school, will you come?" The writer said this jokingly. Sahib replied, "Yes," with a smile. After some days, Sahib saw the writer and came running to her, asked her, "Is your school ready?" It was really a difficult question for the writer to answer. She said, "It takes longer to build a school." The writer feels embarrassed by making a promise that was not meant, as the dark world of Sahib is full of such hollow promises. After months of knowing him, the writer asked him his name. The boy said, "Sahib-e-Alam." The boy actually did not know the meaning of his name. The meaning of his name is Lord of the Universe. Unaware of the meaning of his name, he roams the street with his friends. They all are barefoot boys who appear like the morning birds and disappear at noon. Over the months, the writer started to recognize each one of them. The writer saw their feet and asked one of them, "Why are you not wearing chappals?" That boy answers, "My mother did not bring them down from the shelf." The other boy, who was wearing shoes that did not match, intervenes and says, "Even if she did, he will throw them off." Then the third boy says, "I want shoes." One more explanation the writer heard. People do not wear chappals because of tradition. But the writer seems to be wondering, thinking about this explanation, that this could also be a reason of a perpetual state of poverty. To know more about these rag pickers, the writer decides to visit Simapuri. Simapuri is a place on the periphery of Delhi, or at the outskirts of Delhi. The people who live there have migrated from Bangladesh in 1971. Sahib's family is among them. Simapuri was then a wilderness, but now it is the home of 10,000 rag pickers who live in structures of mud with roof of tin and tarpaulin. They have no facility of sewage and drainage or running water. They have lived here for more than 30 years without an identity. But they have ration cards that get their names on voters list. With the help of the ration cards, they are able to buy grain. For them, food is more important than an identity. The writer saw a group of women in tattered saris or old and torn saris. She asked them why they left their beautiful land of green fields and rivers. Then she got a reply from a woman, "If we can feed our families and go to bed without an aching stomach, we would rather live here than in the fields that gave us no grain." Wherever they find food, they pitch their tents and make them their transit or temporary homes. Their children grow up in them, becoming partners in survival. And survival in Simapuri means what? Rag picking. Garbage to them is gold. Here, garbage is compared to gold because it is valuable to them. It is their daily bread. It gives them a roof over their heads. even if it is a leaking roof. Garbage for a child is even more. Sahib says he sometimes finds a rupee, even a 10 rupee note. When Sahib said this, his eyes were gleaming. In excitement, he said these words: when a poor little child finds a silver coin in the heap of garbage, he does not stop scrounging because there is hope for finding more. For children, garbage has meaning different from it means to their parents. For children, it is like a surprise, something wonderful wrapped in wonder. But the elders have a different meaning for the garbage. For elders, it is simply a means of survival. One winter morning, the writer saw Sahib standing by the gate of a club. He was watching two young men dressed in white playing tennis. Sahib says, I like the game. I go inside when there is no one around. The gatekeeper lets me use the swing. Sahib is also wearing tennis shoes. These shoes were given to him by someone because they were discarded shoes of some rich boy. There is a hole in one of them, but that does not bother Sahib. For the one who has walked barefoot, even shoes with a hole is a dream come true. But the game he is watching is out of his reach, because Sahib is a rag picker and the people like him are not allowed to use the tennis court. One other morning, the narrator found Sahib on his way to the milk booth. He was holding a steel canister in his hand because he was going to the booth to bring milk. He told the narrator that he has started working on a tea stall. His salary is 800 rupees per month with all his meals. But when the writer asked Sahib if he liked the job, then the writer did not get any reply from Sahib. She observed that his face has lost the carefree look. The steel canister that he was carrying seems heavier than the plastic bag he would carry so lightly over his shoulder. We know that the plastic bag that was full of garbage was much heavier than the steel canister. But then why it is said that the steel canister seems heavier? Because the steel canister belongs to the man who owns the tea shop. And Sahib is no longer his own master. The burden that he was carrying on his shoulder was too heavy that he lost his carefree look from his face. He is unhappy because he is not able to live a carefree life now. Because now he is working under someone else. Some other person is his master now. Now let's move to the part 2 of this chapter. The protagonist of part 2 of the chapter is Mukesh. The introductory lines of this part say that Mukesh wants to be a motor mechanic. He is so sure in his desire. He is so confident that he will fulfill his dream. And therefore he announces, I will be a motor mechanic. He knew nothing of cars. He didn't know driving. He didn't know how to repair a car. But still he had a desire in his heart to be a motor mechanic. The second story is about the town of Firozabad, where you will find most of the people engaged in the bangle making industries. Firozabad is famous for its bangles. The bangles which are a symbol of auspiciousness of marriage. People of Firozabad have spent generations working around hot furnaces, welding glasses, making bangles for all the women in the land. Our Mukesh's family is among them. Many children like Mukesh work in the bangle making industries in Firozabad without any hope or without any dream to do something else. But Mukesh seems to be different kind of a person. He has the courage to dream. Looking into the eyes of the narrator, he shares his dream. He didn't know driving, but very confidently he says, I will learn to drive a car. In Firozabad, many children, around 20,000 children, like Mukesh, are engaged in the glass furnaces with high temperatures in dark cells without air and light. One day, Mukesh excitedly took the narrator to show her the place where he lived. Both of them walked down stinking lanes choked with garbage, past homes that remain hovels with crumbling walls, wobbly doors and no windows. Humans and animals living together like the ancient times. They enter a half-built shack, one part of it thatched with dead grass. A frail or weak young woman is cooking evening meal over a firewood stove. She is the wife of Mukesh's elder brother and she is in charge of 3 men, her husband, Mukesh and their father. The father is a poor bangle maker. In spite of long years of hard labor, first as a tailor and then as a bangle maker, he has failed to renovate a house and send his 2 sons to school. All he could manage was to teach them what he knew, the art of making bangles. Mukesh's grandmother has watched her own husband go blind with the dust from polishing the glass of bangles. She says that it is his destiny. She says that God-given lineage can never be broken. They have been born in the caste of bangle makers and have seen nothing but bangles of various colors. Boys and girls sit with their fathers and mothers welding pieces of colored glass into circles of bangles. They work in dark hutments next to lines of flames of flickering oil lamps. Their eyes are more adjusted to the dark than to the light outside. They often end up losing their eyesight before they become adults. Now the writer takes us to the other scene. Savita, a young girl in a dull pink dress, sits alongside an elderly woman. She is soldering pieces of glass. Her hands move mechanically like the tongs of a machine. She is unaware about the sanctity of the bangles she helps make. The old woman beside her has not enjoyed even one full meal in her entire lifetime. She said, "एक वक्त शेर भर खाना भी नहीं खाया." Her husband is an old man with flowing beard. He knows nothing except bangles. He has made a house for the family to live in. He has a roof over his head. The writer was amazed to see that this man achieved what many other people have failed to achieve in their lifetime. Little has moved with time in Firozabad. People do not have enough to eat. They do not have money to do anything else. They do not have the courage to think of anything else. The young men echo the lament of their elders. They have fallen into the vicious circle of middlemen who have trapped their fathers and their forefathers. Years of mind-numbing toil have killed all initiatives and the ability to dream. They are unwilling to get organized into a cooperative. They have no courage for this. They fear that if they gather the courage to do this, they will be hauled up by the police, beaten and dragged to jail for doing something illegal. There is no leader among them. No one helps them to see things differently. All of them appear tired. They are tired as their fathers and forefathers were tired. They only talk of poverty, apathy, greed, and injustice, all negative things, always complaining. By studying their lives and listening to them, the writer was able to conclude her words saying, I see two different kinds of worlds. Number one is the family caught or trapped in a web of poverty, burdened by the disgrace of caste in which they are born. The other world is cruel or vicious circle of the sahukars or moneylenders, the middlemen, and the policemen, the keepers of law, the bureaucrats, and the politicians. All these people have deliberately imposed the heavy baggage on the child that he is not able to put down. The time when he becomes aware about this very heavy burden, he accepts that as naturally as his father. Thinking of anything else would mean to dare, and unfortunately, daring is not the part of the growing up of such children. But in all such dark situations, we see a ray of hope in Mukesh. Mukesh says to the narrator he will go to a garage and learn to drive. The garage was a long way from his home, but he is ready to face all the challenges in his journey to the fulfillment of his dream. He is not only ready to face them, but also he is ready to overcome them, the challenges. He is committed to the fulfillment of his dream. He says he will walk. For him, distance does not matter. In the end of the story, the writer asks him a question: do you also dream of flying a plane? He became silent for some time, and then he said, staring at the ground, no. The concluding lines say, in a small murmur, there is an embarrassment that has not turned into regret. The writer asked him a question that she was not supposed to ask. He felt embarrassed because flying the airplanes was out of his reach, and he was aware about that. He has already set the boundaries of his dream, the limits of his dream, and the limits of his dream allow him to go to the driving of car only. He is fully satisfied thinking of his dream. The dreams of cars that he sees moving fast down the streets of his town. He is full of hope and courage and is committed to the fulfillment of his dream. And this makes the writer happy. I hope that you have understood the story, and to understand this chapter completely, kindly watch this video at least twice. Please subscribe to my channel, like this video and share it with your companions. Thank you so much for watching. Please take care. All the best.